Bamaquza. I was told at the gate, Amaquza akanxitywa apha. So I made sure that I don't wear amaquza again. So I'm saying this, that Minister, you invited people here who might be here for the first time, and they won't forget this. So we thank you, Minister, for your invite. And now that you are here, we will welcome you to the podium. And we'll just stress, Minister, that we are stressed for time. We've been requested by the presidency to be at the precinct by 1 o'clock. So we'll welcome Minister to just greet us, and then we'll take photos here in Parliament and walk down to the venue. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Eset. Let me appreciate and acknowledge the presence of officials from the department, our central manager, as well as everyone who's here, but in the main, our esteemed guests, who also are President Ramaphosa's guests today. And I think I first want to greet you good morning. Yes. One thing that is important is that this year we are celebrating 30 years of South Africa's democracy. It's an important milestone in the history of this country. Important in that many of you may not know about the apartheid South Africa, but we do know. And important in that when you talk about the milestones and things that are tangible, it's yourselves who today we say were in the careers and professions that were not available to us when we grew up. My story is that of going to school in the area where there was no building called school. And therefore the only thing that was there was the church. And that church was used as a school. And having so many schools in South Africa today that are close by our houses and all that in rural areas, we might take it for granted. But we who grew up in South Africa where there were no schools, we know what it means not having a school around you. So I went to school. My first year was in a church. Yours, I want to believe, was at a school. In the church, not as big. In fact, this building is quite big, this hall. Ours was small, but there were 4 classes, first year, second year, standard 1, standard 2. And that was the level at which the school was, up to standard 2. My father, being a priest, motivated for it to at least accommodate standard 3 and standard 4. But in the same church. So 6 classes were in one building called church, because that was the only thing that was available. But post that, standard 4, 5, we had to leave home and go and live elsewhere for us to get standard 5 and 6, so I was not at home. My mother was a good cook, but I'm not a good cook. Because at the time when I was supposed to learn from her, I was no longer at home. She was a good baker. I can't bake. I like it, however, I can't, because I could have learned it from her, but at the time I was not at home. When I started menstruating, I was not at home. I was elsewhere. And before that, I'd visited my sister-in-law who was at the hospital, Emmaus Hospital, to give birth to her firstborn child. And I was made to sleep with pregnant women, and at night many of them delivered. So what I saw young, I saw women who were in pain and were bleeding, and they were children. And I didn't know what had happened before. So when I started menstruating, I had pains, and there was blood, and I thought I was going to give birth to a child. Because nobody had prepared me for it. So I was crying because I was very young. and not understanding as to how can, being so young, can I then give birth to a child? Because my mother was not there. I was away from home. There was only one high school around Escort, one high school, which was responsible for a very wide area. You know, Escort itself, the whole of Escort, Colenso, Moy River, all of us went to one high school. That was Escort Secondary in Tabamhlolo. In that school, there was no physics. There was one teacher who was teaching maths, but there was no physics. That channeled us to say, you can't be a doctor, you can't be an engineer, you can't be a civil, an aviator or anything, because the school itself did not have the subjects. It was just general and maths without physics. No commercial subjects, nothing, because those subjects were not meant for us. Talking about the school I went to. And therefore what was available to us was either being a teacher, because the subjects channeled you to that, to be a nurse, because if you have maths and biology and English, then you could actually be taken for that, but definitely not medicine. The schools and education made us to be what we are, despite our brains, whether you were intelligent or not intelligent. There are things you could never have been during our time under apartheid education, let alone the fact that you would be taught, biology, and they teach you about an eye, but nobody will tell you that that eye that you are labeling is actually your eye. So you will be labeling an eye, the iris, the lens, but you will never be able to say, this black part of my eye is actually the iris. This something that is at the center is actually the pupil, because the education, the Bantu education, did not teach you that. It taught you just for you to know and write the exam, and that is all. Didn't teach us how to speak Afrikaans, for instance. It was for exam, even English for that matter. The only time we were able to construct an English sentence was post-matric, not at high school. That was Bantu education. Now, for you, it's the opportunity that your parents and myself standing in front of you, we didn't have. That today we have young people who are in maritime. I mean, nobody would have told us about something called maritime. What is maritime anyway? Who are in aviation. I mean, honestly, aviation, we're told that is really letting on.
Yes.
So we would shout at it, and because we were told even by our parents, we must go to, where does this child come from? It was from the aeroplane. So aeroplanes were bringing children and never meant for us. That we have yourselves today in such careers, in aviation, in rail, as engineers, because the opportunities have actually been created under difficult situations. We are not a developed country as South Africa. We are a developing country, which means we have limited resources. We don't have everything that UK has, everything that America has. But that today we can actually say in front of us sit people who are from aviation, from maritime, from rail, from road, public transport, and so on. For me, it's a milestone that we might not be actually appreciating, but I think it's something that in South Africa we can appreciate. And that is why we're here. The president in the State of the Nation address related the story of Tintswalo. And I think everybody in South Africa today, as he did, he says, I'm a Tintswalo. And we take some of these things for granted. I always say, we've got a number of graduates who are sitting at home unemployed. However, sitting at home with a certificate and sitting at home with nothing is not the same. because as a doctor who today is unemployed, but when the Minister of Finance makes an announcement about that to say we have now got a budget for that, it doesn't matter who else is at home. They will not form part of that, whatever arrangement. But for those doctors who are at home, when an announcement is made, it means they will take their certificates because they have them. But whoever else who might be how intelligent and so on, who does not have the certificate, will not. So they are sitting at home, yes, but they are definitely not the same. When there is an opportunity for anyone who is in maritime, and we engage the Germans to say, here is SA Agalas, but we want you to take our seafarers. When that opportunity which we are creating is availed, then of course those with certificates will take their certificates and go to SA Agalas and get employment. Those who do not have, they will still remain at home, so they're not the same. Surely not the same. Of course, it frustrates children because sometimes bahlala kuma areas where abantu bayabahleka. But it's for the time being. There is hope and they can't give up. And we're doing everything possible to ensure that children who have qualifications get something to do. And that is why we have got your learnerships, even if they are just for 2 years and so on and so forth. Because government is trying to address those issues to say, we don't have graduates who sit at home without anything that they are doing. So there's a lot that is actually happening. But of course, like I say, I want to emphasize, we are only a developing country. Only a developing country. And I travel. Germany, if you're not educated, it's because you have a master's degree. Otherwise, they count PhDs. But they still have unemployment. Everybody is educated there, if you look at our standards. But they still have unemployment. Maybe how low, but they still have. For those that are unemployed, in many countries, there's nothing that they're getting. Even the 350 that we are paying. So what I'm saying is that it's not as bad as the media is actually trying to indoctrinate us. It's not. It's not like I stand here before you, I'm not corrupt. I've not stolen any money. But in South Africa, it's created that if you are a politician, you are corrupt, you've stolen somebody's money. I stay at the house that I purchased with my late husband, even before I was in politics. And I'm happy with it, because that's what I can afford. But people believe that we're ministers and therefore we've got money because we steal money everywhere. We don't. As a matter of fact, out of the little money that we have, some of us have assisted other people out of our money, out of the little money that we get. Because believe you me, on another day you'll be shocked to know as to how much ministers are getting at the end of the month. It's not what people think. It's definitely not what people think. Some of the people seated here might actually be getting a better salary than myself. CEOs, they can actually pay me and still live out of their salaries. Some of the managers can pay me and still can pay the president, as a matter of fact, and still live. So the point I'm making, we really are welcoming you. We're happy that you are here. The president, I want to believe, because of time, will not be able to introduce all of you. However, we'll probably just point at a few of you. If it was possible, he was going to say from the aviation we've got, and then maybe talk to one person. And then from rail we've got, if we've got those, and then probably I request you to stand. And then from maritime, and then probably then talk about one person, and then and so on and so forth. Because I think he will not have time to introduce all of you because you are many, and he definitely will be pressed with time in Parliament. Time gets allocated, indeed, not for the president, but he can't speak forever. So, and as a matter of fact, he will be saying I spoke about Tinswalo. These are the Tinswalos, the few of them. There are many others out there. If you look at the numbers that we've produced as the Department of Transport, I was actually shocked to say, we've done so much work. With the money of the Department of Transport, we budget 15 million rand per year. And we have all the agreements with 13 universities, and we send our students there. And I was actually saying to the unit, the director there, to say, before COVID-19, those that were trained in Zululand University were absorbed by the industries and companies around Richards Bay. Go back and engage them, so that also continues, because I think also they must have recovered from the impact of COVID-19, so that again we ensure that one, they get their practicals if that is required, but also that they get employed by those companies around Richards Bay. Of course, we also employ them as the Department of Transport, as municipalities, as provinces, but of course the surplus should also be employed by the private sector as well. And that is what we are doing and trying to do. We therefore welcome you and thank you for taking your time. It's Thursday today.
Yes,
it's Thursday today, and many of you are supposed to be at work, but that you have said we're going there, we are availing ourselves. We thank you again. During the course of this year, I've requested the department that we have an engagement. It might even be online with all our alumni, be they from our state-owned companies. Probably they were assisted by our state-owned companies through bursaries, academies, and so on and so forth. It will be online. Then we'll engage. And I think that will also provide you the opportunity to raise whatever issues, but to advise us as well. To say, for those that are coming after us, please take care of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours in Unizulu this just the past week. And we discovered that our students do not have accommodation. And we went there and said, no, but we have an agreement with you. And that agreement, it includes tuition, accommodation, and food. So you can't tell us that our students do not have accommodation. And because we were there, the chief of staff was there, then immediately that was arranged. Now they have accommodation. So I think it's things that we need to look at and say, and so that you can actually advise to say, check on this one point, look at that corner, and so on and so forth, so that we can actually improve. But whether we will continue to empower our young people, indeed we will. The aviation people, the pilots, wherever you are, they will tell you, and even parents, they tell you that we no longer are affording the airtime, the flying hours, because they're very, very costly. We're also looking at that to the extent that SACA is assisting, but we're looking at it as a department as well to say, is it possible that we can have some money just to assist the pilots who need flying hours, so that they can then fly and get into the biggest aircraft. Tina Airbus is not Airbus tina ibhas enkulu, aircraft enkulu, so it's easy. Umuthi aircraft enkulu ngithi Airbus. Elandela lapho sengothi ke SAA. There's encane kakhulu ngithi Airlink. Yes. So ilula kakhulu, but now you know what that means, and thank you very much. I really want to thank you and to welcome you. I want to believe that the president will come and greet you, but of course, as he makes his speech, he will definitely refer to you as his Tinsalus. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The names, as you said, Minister, your office advised the names that should be mentioned by the President, and we forwarded them to the President. This morning we took clips of everyone who was willing to speak and the clips of those 4 mentioned names. So once the President addresses, we'll also be sharing them with you and on our social media platforms. So I will thank you, Minister, and I will ask everyone to just walk now to the precinct at the City Hall, because time is killing us, and hopefully we'll see Minister again there for photos. There's going to be refreshments served here after